Let's close that.
Right, we should be live across LinkedIn. And thank you guys for starting to tune in. This is a client success interview with Siraj. Siraj is a client of mine who has just finished up the Reignite PRO program, probably like 2-3 weeks ago, something like that. Yeah, started just over 3 months ago on the program. And really what we wanted to do today was just go through Siraj's experience for you guys so that you've got the benefit and understanding of who he is, how or what his journey was like going through the past sort of couple of years, past sort of maybe sort of 2 to 5 years, and then his experience on the program. Just for our benefit, anyone that is watching this on live, please comment #live. If you're watching it later and you don't catch the live, I know everyone's super busy, just comment #replay. So that we know that you've watched it and got some benefit from it. So, Siraj, welcome and thank you for joining us. I know you're actually over in stateside at the moment, but thank you for coming on.
No, thanks for having me, Alex. It's good to be on the session. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, look, I wonder if you could just start giving us a bit of a brief introduction as to who you are, your background, what you do for work, and any sort of other sort of lifestyle considerations that you think are relevant.
Yeah. So Siraj, I work as a sort of director for data and AI at Experian. Experian Technologies is a product engineering digital transformations company headquartered out of Kerala in India, and I run the data and AI operations for the company. I'm based in the UK, and usually most of the people would be seeing me in and around client meetings in and around London and all that. But like today, I'm out in the US at the moment for a conference that I'm presenting at tomorrow, and for a few client meetings. I have a good team of about 50, 60 people based out of Kerala, and we help clients with their data and analytics and AI challenges, which of late is taking a lot of the news. My background from a pre-Experian perspective have all been in this sort of IT consulting data type role, which has meant that I've been desk-based. As I mentioned on my LinkedIn post the other day, I've been desk-based for about 20 plus years, either helping out with data challenges or helping with strategy and things. The common challenge that comes along with all of that from a lifestyle perspective is probably fast food, pretty bad exercise regimes and the likes, poor choices in terms of nutrition and the lot, but a lot of brain thinking and kind of working with it as we are delivering projects and clients. When it gets to high pressure, it's always those things like the good things that don't get the attention, right? But yeah, that's been the background over time from a program perspective, and the reason why Alex, you and I had this session and kicked off the whole Reignite PRO. It's been that sort of weight gain over the many 20 years that I've picked up that made me think, well, I've got to do something about it. But yeah, that's the background, right? That's the background in terms of thinking.
Nice, thanks for covering that. I guess when we look at performance, right, your performance as an individual, when I talk about it and I use that term, I'm probably using three bits, or three pillars rather. I'm talking about health, holistic health, physical health, mental health, emotional health, so holistic health. We're talking about personal and professional development, skill acquisition, and learning more about yourself. And we're talking about mindset and motivation. And when those three are tackled simultaneously, your performance tends to move in a positive direction. So for you, it was the initial conversation that we had was very much on kind of the physical health and some element of mental health linked to that. Like, how long had you been unhappy with elements of your physical health and weight?
Yeah, for quite a long time, to be honest, I'd say. I think from a professional and sort of that learning and skill acquisition part of things, I can only be ever so grateful for all the companies that I've worked with in the past, where either part of a development program or things like that. There's someone else holding you accountable to make sure that you are bringing on a new certification or kind of exceeding whatever you did up until that point and trying to be a better version of yourself year on year as you go through it. And you justify that for a a better paycheck or a promotion and the likes. But when it comes to the personal fitness, I think you are your own boss, and often, more often than holding yourself accountable, you allow leniencies to get into the way, right? So you kind of go the pat on the back saying you've been really working hard, so maybe you can take a few days off, and kind of give yourself the excuses that puts you back. So for quite some time, I think I'd say a good more than 5 years, I've been aware of the fact that my weight is increasing bit by bit. And during COVID, just before COVID, I had some of the blood sugar checks and everything, and that kind of put me initially in that sort of pre-diabetic range. And then when that kept repeating, that was not great either, because the numbers I could see, it was constantly going up, which made me realize that I've got to do something about it. But often the support that you get is either in terms of sign up with a personal trainer, or sign up with this calorie counting program or whatever to try and monitor it. And often that didn't work. And when that didn't work, it was on your mind all the time, as in this thing that I've got to achieve, but I clearly don't know how to achieve it, or it's like trying to splashing in water when you don't know swimming. You're just at the same place. Your hands are beating all around, but you're not moving. You're in the same place every now and then. And except that in the case of weight, probably every now and then you go back and check, it's gone slightly up in terms of where you were, and you don't know what you did wrong, and it feels a bit odd. Right? So definitely been on my mind for quite some time, and that interesting. You bring the mental side. I think I've mentioned this to you before. Prior to our conversations, I don't think that mental element was quite evident to me, as in I was unconscious of the fact that mentally this was quite draining. The the fact that it wasn't helping, isn't it? So there's a kind of correlation between the two to some extent. You're working really hard, but there's no result, and that kind of drives you down nothing's going to change. I better get used to how I'm being seen, and that sort of personality, and without really being able to do anything about it going forward. So yeah, it's been on my mind for quite some time.
And so being on your mind, like something that is causing you to be able to disconnect with your physical self, but also having an impact, or starting to have an impact on your mental health. What was it at this point, this year, that made you think, actually, you know what, like I want to do something about it now, versus any other year? Because we had a brief conversation last year. We kind of talked about just some details of the program, some pointers, some tips, and like that wasn't the right time. What made it different this year?
Yeah, I think primarily circumstances in the family has actually made me sit up and take a note of what is going on. So I went through a bit of a reflection period last year, kind of looking at where am I in life, in the broader picture of life, as you would do, right? And that's probably another session altogether. But that's then made me think, well, hang on, what can you do about it, and what can you change? Right? So children about to go into college, and so you only have a few more years with them at home, while we are all, four of us, I mean, for probably those attending on the call, I've got a couple of kids, both in that sort of final years of secondary school and about to get into uni. So thinking, I want to get quality time with the family. And if I reflected back on my work style, I was just working really hard and sort of doing a lot of things from a work perspective. And then you start to think about, well, what is it that brings value out of everything that you do for life going forward, right? So, and that's when I said, well, family, you want to be in a position where you're really healthy and have that great time with your wife, with your partner, when you're ready. I mean, when work is not on top of your mind at all the time. Mm-hmm. And after the children have gone, you kind of think, what does that picture look like? So there's a lot of those circumstances that kind of drove back into the elements of, are you doing everything right to make sure that you have that sort of readiness or savings for the future, right? And that's what made me think, look back at it. And that's when I took stock, and I kind of thought, health-wise, not great. I could be better, definitely much more lighter than where I am. Um, from historically, from the family, I've had challenges with heart diseases. And so thinking of that and thinking, well, are you leaving everything in a good shape in order to be able to be there for the future? And then I'm sure there's that element of smart working as opposed to hard working alone, kind of going back and saying, well, are you doing the right thing? And this now I know better after having been on the Reignite program for a bit, because it's not always about just repeating what you do and doing that more and more often to try and achieve what you have been doing at work, but more thinking more smartly and finding out new ways to be better at yourself, being yourself, as opposed to just pushing a lot of hard work into it. So yeah, it's that sort of thinking around it that made me reflect and say, well, it's time to change. You'll recollect that we had some of our early conversations, and I was kind of going, well, I'm not quite sure. Great program, because at that time when we had our initial conversation, I had been through so many, and you probably recollect I was doing a particular personal trainer program remotely, even because of the COVID challenges and everything else. Um, we were doing sessions where he would join on Zoom, and we'd or on WhatsApp, and then we'd go through some weight training and the likes, and so keep track of different things. And it wasn't working, right? So part of me was thinking, well, I'll just carry on with that. This is going to be just another program, nothing different. Um, but when you go through a lot of the insights that you see from the pages, etc., made me realize, well, maybe it isn't. It sounds slightly different, ever so slightly. But having been on the program, I can say massively different. But I don't think you do justice to your marketing program that way. That in it that it is quite different from the other programs that you see online.
I'm gonna have to find a new marketing director somewhere.
I hope the current
One who
person.
knows a good marketing person, let me know. Hit me up. You made a really good comment there. It was like being better at being yourself, right? Which is I've never thought about it quite like that. It's a really interesting way of putting it, right? But being better at being yourself. Before the program, what was suffering as a result? If you look at maybe some of your relationships or your relationship with yourself, your relationship with your family, what was how was it impacting your physical health? How was that impacting relationships? How was it impacting your performance at work, your fitness? What did that look like?
Yeah, I think I'd always like to think that um, there is a lot that I can offer to either companies or people in my interactions, or in the way I work with people in teams. So that's where I kind of say being better at being yourself, because often I feel that I am being that sort of hindrance in bringing the best of me to forward as well. So either having slight element of an egoistic self in front and saying, well, that's how I think of it. I'm not open to ideas or whatever. There is an impact in the family, or again, back into me, more from being in person, being in the moment as we're going through it, right? So being present as we live our daily lives, and um, thinking of everything that you do, everything that we do as a take decisions in the family, and how that sort of affects our future. Just being able to think on that, reflections on it. Those are some habits that I wasn't expecting to pick up from the program, to be honest. I mean, like I said, I came into it purely from being. Um, I almost expected to say Alex is going to give me this magic potion that we're going to drink every day, and in a few weeks' time you'll see that my weight's going off. And so I'm expecting something like that, right? There's something, um, or as Reggie would say, the magic shot. There's something in there that's actually going to reduce our weight significantly. But what we did through the mindset exercises or various parts of the program made us reflect on. I know they are actually defined on from a perspective of weight loss and everything else, but for me, I've also taken that away and said, well, I can probably put the same exercise into practice in a work scenario or in a family scenario, and then let me try and do that same thing back in the family, back at work, and see how that sort of affects. Right? It I don't have anyone to hold me accountable or follow up through that program or that change when I'm making it, because it's something that I'm experimenting on my own. But at the same time, the effect of that I can actually see in many of the conversations I'm having or day to day life that we live. Right. So um, I think definitely from a point of view, from a perspective of how it has impacted, it has made me think and be more present and be more um, active in many things that I do in my day to day life, which clearly wasn't something that I was expecting through the program.
Awesome. That's awesome to hear. And I think, the reason why we start in like fitness and health is because it's possibly the easiest pillar to get initial results with, and to see demonstrable results that you can measure and track with data, right? But then, as you say, it's like a lot of the frameworks you can then take outside of that, and you start looking at broader performance terms, personal development, mindset, motivation, your work performance, and you can start to apply a lot of the same frameworks, right? So it's awesome to hear that that's exactly what you've done.
Yeah.
I guess, if you think about not learning those pillars or not applying those pillars, and where you were at the beginning of the year, what might be different now? If we hadn't have done, Reignite Pro, for example, what would that look like?
I think so. I had got to a point where I wasn't upset. I wasn't a sad, sobbing person in the corner. I was more starting to live with what I knew I was getting at. I mean, there are these. So this shirt that I'm wearing today, I haven't worn this for about 5 years. So
Amazing. I
it's
love
come out of the closet, and it's something that I'm wearing for the session. And part of me was thinking, well, that's interesting, right? So that I always, when we have moved on in the last 20 years or so, I've always kept shirts or uh, garments and I mean dresses that you're thinking, well, someday you will go leaner that you can wear them at some point, but it never comes out of the closet. It's always sat in that box that's sitting in one corner. So if I hadn't done the program, I think this wouldn't have happened. It wouldn't have given me the confidence that this is something that can change. And there is a level of, and again, I don't think so. When you invited me for this program, for this call today, I was thinking, Alex, I haven't achieved what I want to achieve yet. Right? So why are we doing this client success? I think it's client. I want to call it client pre-success because I think there's a lot more to go for me, and I want to do that. And it's kind of gearing up to get to that point. But I didn't think I'd have had this confidence if I hadn't done the Reignite Pro, knowing that things can change. Because, like I said, I tried various. I don't think there's any walking programs on Google Play that I haven't tried. I don't think there's any MyFitnessPal or any of those calorie trackers, including the one that you would take photos of and things like that that I haven't tried. I've tried dietitians of different types, varieties of different programs for various things. I've signed up with friends to try and do programs where I do more walking, holding yourself accountable to it. So there's been different approaches that I've tried to it, but never has the weight come off beyond the 3-4 kilograms. And often I put that back on if I just take a pause for a bit, right? But having done the Reignite program, and I think the second half of it, where we started seeing that more um, that consistent conscious consistency kind of starting to play its role, and getting to a point where even if you make a mistake and if it goes up slightly, there is another going down fairly quickly because it's you're staying on top of that. So that confidence of even when I'm bad, I know that no, I can be good and I can correct what I didn't do in the last couple of days and reworking on some of those. I don't think that would have happened if I hadn't joined the program.
Awesome.
I would have probably carried on perfectly fine from a from a work perspective, but the benefits that I have got from a family and just myself, health and everything else, I think that's quite a lot.
Nice. I mean, summarizing sort of family, there's health, there's confidence is a big one in there, right? You touched on one of the frameworks we use, conscious consistency, which is our nutritional protocol, which just simplifies a lot of the fluff out there, and particularly the fitness market. And there's two key parts to it, just for anyone watching. The first part is how do you balance energy equations? So it's working out the science behind nutrition, looking at things like your total daily energy expenditure, your basic metabolic rate, your active metabolic rate, then working out calorie deficits for sustainable weight loss. It's like, as I said to you at the beginning, it's like you could lose weight. I could help you lose weight eating nothing apart from McDonald's and Domino's. But it's like that's probably not going to serve your long-term health objectives in terms of having more energy, living longer, living a more fulfilled, happier life, right? So the second part then is how do we substitute certain foods that are less healthy or less suited for your metabolic type over time in a sustainable way? Those are the two key parts, right? And we've got a registered dietitian that's come on board to do some help with that now as well. But I guess outside of that, were there any other key frameworks that you're maybe sort of still utilizing after the program's finished, or at least stood out to you whilst on the program, that were perhaps a little bit different than something that you've tried in the past?
I think Kaizen sticks on with me so big, and I think everything that I do today, I put that practice, bring that practice about. I mean, it's all about making small changes, not being too drastic with things because you won't stick on with it. Make small changes, but have that goal and how you want to get there, right? And that's something that I'm trying to do even back at work. I know that there are elements that we need to change, but as we're going through that change, I'm kind of going, well, I'm not going to jump at it in one go. We'll make small steps and we'll get there, right? And that I don't think it's a framework, but you always kind of keep saying we only go forward, we don't come back. We get better at ourselves every day. All right? That as well for me has been a big. Whenever you make one back, something that feels like a backward step, right? So you're feeling so lazy, you don't want to do the gym today, or you don't want to do the walking today. There is that sort of nagging thought in the mind that's kind of going, well, that's not what you had agreed. That's not what you had said you're going to do. And so there is that sort of framework that kind of helps me make sure that I'm not letting go of what I had, the promises that I had made to myself. There are small elements that I continue to do. So, at least from a perspective of keep in mind all the time and on a daily basis around the morning movements and doing my walks, etc. That's been quite important for me, and having a healthier relationship with the gym and food in general, right? So you know what you're eating, and you know that it's all a math at the end of the day. What goes in will show up somewhere unless you're using it, right? So I mean, it's so simple that anyone should be able to crack that. But at the same time, if you don't track, and if you're not aware of what's going in, then often it just doesn't get shown up. You think that you've done an average day and a normal day, but it isn't the case, both from a nutrition and from an exercise perspective. So some of those things around tracking both what you do from a nutrition perspective as well as from an exercise perspective is something that I go on. So when I jump on the scales and I'm kind of thinking, well, I expected to go down more. Why didn't it change? And I reflect back on, well, what did I do last week? And then you go, well, right, you didn't do as many as you had promised yourself that you would do, right, as you had planned to do, and that's why you haven't changed as much. So there's everything that we see on the scales, it's got a direct correlation to all of these elements that contribute to it. So I don't think it's one thing. Every time, and I think our sessions and videos is something that I often go back to. I might have mentioned to you on some of our calls. When you're lacking that motivation, I think it's good to know or go over that framework again to know that you can do it. It's not a case of it will need a program coach all the time to keep going, right? So as long as you have got that frameworks in mind, it's all good to go.
Nice, I like that. Okay, let's one of the things you brought up there that I think is quite salient is separating the data from the drama. And so you came on and you had a body weight, a fat loss objective. You mentioned sort of the pre-diabetic markers. What's happened, from the start of the program to now? What's been some of the actual results, the tangible parts of the results?
Yeah, I think so. From the pre-diabetic marker, I was actually just looking up the doctor's note today. So when I sent the blood test results, often the doctor's notes comes back on the side saying, "Can you talk to the nurse about your diabetic numbers that you're seeing in here, the markers that you're seeing in here, because we need to do something about it." But when I did the last test, the doctor's note was all very positive. He was like, "Amazing results. I have no idea what you're doing between the last 3 months. I have no idea what you've done, but you brought it well within range, and it's amazing to see this. Yes, you can improve further. I think we're talking about 20 plus points in terms of reduction, right?
Wow.
And I'm back into the range of, well, it's high, but still not very high. And I was actually through the roof in terms of numbers, right? So bringing it back to a range that the doctor is happy with, or in terms of the progress. And I think something that I'm conscious of, that I can control and take it to the normal range fairly quickly, as long as I continue with this sort of consistency around everything that I do. That has been a significant benefit for me. Like I said, I've been fighting with this for ever since my diagnosis came back. The first results came back. It's only been going up and up and up. But being able to take it back to the range that is acceptable is definitely a big plus for me. And from a weight loss perspective, I think fat loss, I'd say if I did the comparison of before and after type photos, and these shirts are probably just evidences for that. There are things that wouldn't really fit me, and I think I'm okay to say there have been many conversations in the past where work conversations, and I know colleagues don't mean anything bad, but there are references where we talk about fat people and things like that, right? And there is always a picture of yourself that gets stuck in your mind when you're thinking about how you place yourself into an environment or into a position, and you kind of think that picture of me is not, I don't think is always very fat, right? But it's over time, because that's what I'm hearing from other people or seeing myself in the mirror, etc. I've pictured myself as a very fat person sitting in the room, or that's how it is. And now I'm starting to think that it doesn't have to be that way. It can change, and I can make that change. So from a and I'm starting to see it, and I will say this again and again, lest in case I'm watching the video myself again, I want me to remember that it is only the starting of the journey. It's a pre-success journey, as opposed to it being right, this is what you have achieved, right? So I think we'll go a long way in terms of how we reduce that fat even more. But I think that's been a big success for me.
Yeah, I love that. It's like this is the end of the beginning, right? This is we're getting to the end of the first chapter or two. There's a lot of the journey still to come. But what you just said there, I cannot stress to anyone watching how important that is, because what you've effectively said there is what I term, and whenever you hear me talking in videos or if you read any of my posts, what I term a self-identity shift. So how you talk about yourself, how you view yourself, that's changed. And that's massive, because our self-identity is the single biggest lever that we have to any transformational change, right? It's the single biggest thing that we've got, because it dictates how we view ourselves and our associated standards, which then dictate our behaviors. So, and this is, something that we talked about in the first couple of weeks. It's like you would reference yourself as fat, right? And we put a stop to that straight away. Right? Because if other people are saying it, that's one thing. But if you're saying it, it's like that. We need to cut that out, because we need to start to just question that belief, right? That's the first part of shifting your identity, is just questioning the belief. Once we can question it and we can see that actually I'm able to lose weight, and then I'm able to lose weight sustainably and consistently, that self-identity starts to shift to the point now where it's like, that there's this journey in front of you, but there's this confidence. There's like, I'm just going to do it. It's just an amount of time now. So, for anyone watching, that's exactly what you've said there is what self-identity shifting looks like, which is awesome. Absolutely awesome to hear. And I guess, combining those together, right? So that we've got the physical aspects that you've talked about, on the kind of the mindsets, changes that you've experienced on the program. What does that look like? What's maybe changed in the way you kind of think and feel, either about yourself or about aspects of your life, whether it be work, whether it be relationships, whether it be, health, exercise, and fitness?
I think that element is something that often goes unnoticed in our lives in general. Because when you think about if you put yourself in a work situation, right, and companies and learning development officers and everyone else will take care of this for you when you're in a work scenario. They'll put you in a room with 12 other colleagues of yours or 10 other colleagues of yours, and you kind of go through this feedback, learning how to do feedback proper, learning how to do your communications better, learning how to be a better presenter, those kind of things. They will actually train you through it. But what you don't realize is the personal side. Often you don't write things out. You don't do your journaling to an extent that you're not reflecting on what went well today, what could I do better, and how am I going to make that change. So you're not doing that preparation often. I mean, I think most of us aren't. Definitely, more successful people are doing it more regularly and are able to beat themselves at being better versions of themselves. Um, I think that is a big gap in definitely looking back at myself. I can see that was a big gap in the way I was functioning. So if I'm thinking about, I think we talked about some examples where just being lazy because you are, oh, I can come back onto it. It's something at home. At work, there's always a proposal or a presentation that's always going to drive that date. And so often that's set in stone and you put everything else around it and you get to that presentation and get it done, right? Or win a project or deliver something, etc. But on the home front, if something as simple as mowing the lawn, you might actually say, well, it doesn't have to be this week. You can come back to it next week. And you just put it aside for later. Because again, going back to the example that I was saying, you cut yourself a lot of slack. Just pat your back and say, well, it's okay. You've been hardworking, so you don't need to do that. And that element, I think, through the program, just reflecting has been it's been one of my challenges as I went through the program. I've admitted to you this before because I hate mindsets program because often it kind of goes, well, what did you do and why did you do it? And you're reflecting on yourself, and often there's a lot of thinking to do that. You're like, yes, I know I didn't do that right. Yes, I know there are better ways to do it, but why do I need to write it down? But the process of going through and making it clear for yourself and then talking it through with you or in our sessions has often helped me kind of reflect on what you would do differently and how you would make that situation better. Um, and I take this on everything, right? When you're looking at the goal setting side of the program, and you're looking overall for the period and saying, well, what are you going to do? What are the key things that are important to you from a values perspective, and how do you see them sitting in today? And how do you what are you going to do about it? Are you going to change something because you know that what you want and where you are different? How are you going to bring that about? So all of that reflections actually, I think, has had a massive impact. It's not been my favorite part of the program, but I think now that Reignite's over, I must say I miss it to some extent because it's an opportunity to get better, isn't it? And I think it's something that I've now fallen back on to other guides and books on to try and see, well, how else can I improve myself? I think that's been significant.
I guess what you're talking about there is the ancient art of stoicism for the modern day age. The best businesses, well, the average business will at least have quarterly reviews, and they'll kind of look at performance and results, and most of it will be quantitative, some of it will be qualitative. Good businesses will do it every quarter, every month, sometimes every week. And they'll also look at, okay, well, how do we get better? Not just give you a higher target, and if you miss the first one, it's like, go figure. It's like, well, why didn't you hit the first target in the first place? How do we actually ensure that we underpin the next set of goals and objectives? But at the same time, it's like, maybe 97% of businesses will kind of be in the average phase, and, maybe 30-40% of businesses in the kind of the great phase. We don't do it. Maybe 3% of people do it from a personal level. And so that kind of stop, reflect, listen, learn on your behaviors, your actions, so that you can, put in place interventions moving forwards. Just by doing that, you're in the 3% minority. And it's hard, right? Because we're not necessarily taught to do it. And when there's something that we don't like, something that we did that we knew we shouldn't have done that, it can feel like a certain way. But those feelings, when we don't acknowledge them, we try and suppress them. Right? We try and mask them, whether it's with alcohol, whether it's with food, whether it's with you name it. We try and put something on top of it. So the reflective portion, of the program, I think is really important, and I think it's, despite you saying it's hard. I like that you said it was hard, right? Because you found something that was hard and you still overcame it. And I guess if you're wrapping up everything, the physical, like, change, 10 kilograms lighter, being able to fit in the shirt that you haven't been in for 5 years, like that shift in terms of reflective mindset, this just being the start of your journey, and the impact it's had on you, not just you, but your family as well. Like, how does that make you feel?
Oh, super proud, super proud. I think because we also did it as a group, or the family also joined in from various perspective of taking part in the exercises, rethinking and revisiting how we have that relationship with food in general. Um, when we did the immersion day and learning about the different styles of cooking and everything that kind of contributes into your well-being. I think for us it has been it's been a massive um, opportunity to get better, to be better about in everything that we do, and I'm proud that we did that, and I'm really proud of the changes that I've made as an individual as well, because I'm kind of thinking, well, it's a great example. I wish I could stand up and say, well, here are all the things that everyone else should be doing. I feel like, I want to stand up and shout it out to everyone so that they all get the benefit of doing it. But at the same time, I'm kind of going, Siraj, you've only started, and you've only started to pick up some of these because you're following it now. Keep doing it, because you then have a bigger story to say, a more powerful story to say, and keep doing it so that you are able to achieve that as you go through it. Right? Some of these are very. We talk about mindset as you were explaining that. I was thinking some of this is actually very personal, very, what might seem very minor impact it has had, especially the conversations you have with your partner, with your children back at home, and how you are present in the moment, and being able to judge a lot of that. I don't think any of us. I mean, those of us who do it really well are really hats off that they're doing it really well, and I'm sure they're working on it. I think it's all of us will benefit from being that person, that better version of ourselves through our lives. And we all need to know about it. That's why I say, I feel like I want to stand up and shout and say, do this, because you're going to get a better version of yourself back.
Nice,
Very
nice,
cool.
fantastic. Well, like, since you've been out of the Reignite PRO program, what's been different? We're not coaching anymore, sort of each week. How is life different? Maybe sort of just two sort of key takeaways, 2 or 3 key takeaways.
Uh, Actually, changing that accountability, I think this was one of the things that I was kind of worried about as we got to the end of the program as well. Because as we went through the program, there was always that, oh, we've got the weekly call with Alex coming up. What are you going to say? Oh, how does it's almost like a test and preparation for the test. And you're kind of looking at everything and saying, is everything in order? Oh gosh, I said I'd do 3 sessions. I haven't done that. So there's always a sort of accountability angle that was present as we went through the program. Coming out of the program, it's always been trying to train yourself to be accountable to yourself as you're looking through it, and that's been a massive change. I mean, even when you go through, like, I was at the best of my health in the last week or so, having a bit of cough, cold, flu coming in. So there are days that you feel, I can't do it, and I think even amidst that, I kind of force myself to get out there and walk for a bit because you want to do it. So that is a challenging part, I think, coming out of the program, and I'd be keen to see how I keep on with it over the next few weeks, and coming up to it, because of that sort of, like I said, reduction is one element, but I also want to see how that rebounding, whether works or doesn't work, right? Am I going to gain everything back and I won't, by the way. But am I going to gain that back? And I just want to watch where myself is actually going to is heading down that route. The other element is I think I've always through a program I've always felt that I've learned something new every week as we come into it, and um, someone else, you in this instance, have been doing that prep for me, kind of looking at, right, all this week we focused on nutrition. I'm going to focus on exercise for a bit. I'm going to focus on mindset for a bit, and we talk about that. Um, be it the wheel of life or whatever. So we are talking about various aspects of enhancements or improvements, and there is someone to monitor and kind of guide you through that. Out of the program, I'm conscious that I'm not getting that sort of on a weekly basis with Alex. So how are you going to feed that in? And like I said, I've been trying to do some subscriptions where you get not necessarily weight loss, but more from a getting your guides ready so that you're reading more or learning more, that you can try to be better, right? There are plenty of materials out there that I learned, and again, I've only been warming up to it since our program. um, so there are plenty of resources out on the internet. It's about trying to understand which ones work for you, learn about it, learn about the science, and if it makes sense, then try it out and then get it going. And again, add that um, onto your list or onto your routines that would keep going over time. And you've got to keep doing that. And again, early days of coming out of the program, so I'm yet to figure out if that's going to stick and continue and develop over time as we go through. But yeah, that's a couple of things that I'm kind of thinking, well, gosh, it's a bit overwhelming. And again, so this thing that I was talking about, travel wise, when I'm traveling, I'm always at the worst of my nutrition and everything else, because you just eat what you get, right? And you move on and you don't do exercises. But like I said, I did my walk today. It is unusual. I never come down on a trip, and the first thing on my mind is not. First thing that went into the bag this time around was my gym trainers and everything else as well. So, having that mindset to say, well, you're traveling, but that's okay. You can still keep on with your health and that focus. That's quite important as well. So I think, yeah, we'll see how it goes.
Nice. And I think you're referencing, I guess, the dropping of the all or nothing mindset, as in I'm traveling, I can't exercise or look after myself. I'm just gonna, it's kind of whatever's given to me, I'll just eat that. To yes, I'm traveling. Yes, I can't control what's necessarily cooked for me at conferences, at the hotel in the evening, but I can make some more intelligent choices. Right? I can control the controllables, and even the way in which you're talking now is like you've you've got the spark, and that initial momentum shift is like, okay, right, this is the end of the beginning. Now let's focus on doing some more hard work. Right now, let's focus on taking the tools that have worked for me, make sure that they're my foundations, then layer on some new stuff on top of it. Right? Because this personal development game is like it doesn't end. Right? There's always something to focus on. It's just about that balance that gives you the control. I think if you rewind maybe to last year when we spoke, or even before then, 5 years ago when you started to feel like that you actually wanted to change things, what would you say to that version of yourself then?
Um, I think I'd say don't think a lot. So if I rewind myself to our first conversation, um, I'd say don't think about it quite a lot. Just sign up for it. It's going to make a change, right? Now knowing that the program impacts me in different um, ways of life in a lot of positive ways, I'd say, Siraj, don't think, just sign up for it and just get going, right? Because it's all about just get going and be committed to it. I think there is that element that's quite critical to make sure that it happens. 5 years ago, I don't know. I don't. I mean, being completely transparent, yeah, I don't know if it's a phase of life and everything else that's made me think, well, time's running out. You've got to do something before you get on with it. 5 years ago, if it was before my diabetic time and everything, there's probably that sort of invincible feeling that you've got, right? And nothing's gonna get over me types, right? No, no, me down, me putting on another 10 kilograms, no way, right? So I'm gonna be the best uh, all the time. So maybe that is that confidence that you are slowly building, but you've got to have an open eye towards it as you like, just look at things more realistically and more, yeah, do yourself a favor and cut the crap. Just get to it. Just get to it. Just
Candor there. Yeah. Okay. Well, look, I'm just conscious of time. I know you've got a meeting to go to stateside, but for anyone that's watching this either on live or replay, have you got any closing reflections, having been through the program, or any pearls of wisdom for people that just might be in the same place? They're either from a health perspective just carrying too much weight for where they personally want to be, or they kind of just feel maybe a little bit stuck, going around in circles a little bit, stuck in a rut, just not moving forwards, or not moving forwards at the pace that they want. What would you say to those guys?
Yeah, I mean, I think from a weight perspective, it can all be changed. There is nothing that you don't have to feel like you are not the driver of your life, right? So you can actually take control and bring it down, bring it to the levels that you're happy with. It is all math, as we've reflected on and worked through with it. If you feel like you've been dieting all along and are still putting on weight, just write it down somewhere, and I'm sure there are things that's going in that you are not either aware of, or are not acknowledging. So that's critical. And the only other thing I would say is you can do this. I think I mentioned earlier, there's plenty of resources online, allowing you to be a better version of yourself, both from a physical, mental, and sort of performance perspective. But I think, Alex, your program kind of helps with that. Someone else has done the hard work for you, and put that sort of structure together that I think gives you that sort of nudge in the right direction, and puts your mind right and gives you that confidence that it can change. So I'd say, yeah, think about, it might not be this program, it might be something else, but whatever it is, think about it, that know that it can change, and think and do that honest feedback on, can you jump on it and take control of your life?
Awesome. Well, it's Siraj, thank you so much for jumping on and speaking to everyone today. I think your journey's an inspiring one. As we said, this is only the end of the beginning. We'll be checking in again in another sort of 4 or 5 months, and then the final checkup as part of this program is in 12 months' time. So it'll be interesting to see how much further along you are at that point. But I think, if anything, the last 3 months are anything to go by, I'm excited for those conversations now, because you've demonstrated that you can change. Your self-identity has shifted. The habits, rituals, actions, and behaviors that are associated with that have shifted. And there's a whole new relationship there with food, with exercise, with health, with fitness, and that you're taking outside of that into your relationships and in other areas of your life. So it's awesome to see, and it's been a real privilege working with you.
No, yeah, the privilege is all mine. And I think I'm ever so grateful that we've had the time together, Alex, working on it. And I've, over the program, I think I've gained that friendship. It hasn't been a sort of a coach and a sort of, someone who's actually going through a program kind of relationship that we've had, in many of the things that we've discussed together. I'm only fortunate to have had the opportunity. Thanks so much, and we're all very grateful for it.
Awesome. Well, guys, hopefully that has been insightful for you too, watching this. We're going to have to shoot in a minute, but if you do have any questions, please do pop them in the chat, and we'll make sure that either myself or Siraj pop back and answer those in due course. But thank you for tuning in, and I hope you all have an awesome rest of the week. Take care and stay safe.
Bye-bye.